Hey guys, it's Mike here, and over the course of the Dragon Ball franchise, we've been introduced to a lot of different Super Saiyan forms. And over time on my channel, I've often thought about doing a dedicated video ranking all of them. And so today, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing, as I'm going to be taking a look into the mainline Super Saiyan forms, analyzing them based on their designs, their usefulness in the story, how iconic they are, and really just my personal taste. Now, I'm not going to be going into a lot of the fan fiction ones or Super Dragon Ball Heroes and stuff like that, and for all we know, by the time that the series is finally concluded, if it ever does, we'll be introduced to even more. So I made sure to exclude certain ones from this list that I had mentioned, as well as borderline ones. There's not going to be any Ultra Instinct, Ultra Ego, or Gohan Beast on here, for instance, but I'm going to be showing you ones that I would have considered more or less the true Super Saiyan throughout Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, and Dragon Ball Super. So let me go into this, and I'm going to be doing it in the way that I've seen a lot of people do it over time, which is in regard to, well, this kind of ranking tier list. I figure it makes it easier for everyone. So you can see the ones that are rated down here. Now, let's talk about the first one, of course, which is Super Saiyan, as it says right here, first grade. Of course, we're introduced to a number of different grades of Super Saiyan over time. Here is the initial legendary form that Goku achieved on Namek. Now, in terms of this, where would I rate it? Where would I rank it from S all the way to F? Resurrection F. Now, well, I would have to give this one, of course, an S tier. This, for me, is, well, the most iconic form in Dragon Ball. It is the one that Goku achieved against Frieza. There was a good amount of build up to that form, not necessarily for him becoming it, but in terms of Vegeta bringing up the idea with Nappa all the way back in the Saiyan saga, and then him continually saying that he was going to become one, and then thinking that Goku was going to become one, that Gohan would, and it was the thing that Frieza feared the most that in the original continuity, not involving Beerus, caused him to want to destroy the Saiyan planet, Saiyan homeworld. It was a legend among his people that scared them so much, Vegeta's people, that Frieza decided to erase all of them. In terms of its usefulness, it's stuck around ever since. In just about every arc we've seen it, and even though it has been surpassed time and time again, it is the foundation for the following forms, and not just that, but also it is the one that was able to overcome the strongest threat at the time, the one that kind of summed up much of the story of Goku going from the low-class warrior to the Super Saiyan legend who overthrew the Emperor of the Universe. I have to give that, for sure, a S tier when it comes to this. But let's get into the following grades. So we got Super Saiyan, the second grade. Super Vegeta, we saw that Trunks used this a little bit, and even Goku in the Time Chamber was able to tap into it. Now, in terms of this, what does this do? This allows Vegeta to defeat Semi-Perfect Cell, or at least he would have been able to kill him and wipe him out, but of course Vegeta allowed his pride to run away with him. And with that being said, that's all the kind of usefulness it ever really had in the story. It didn't really go too much further. In terms of design, I mean, it's a bulkier, cooler looking form of Super Saiyan, I guess you could say. It looks like, he hit the gym pretty hard in between, but in terms of usefulness, not really the best, so I'd give this kind of right in the middle, C. Now, next grade would have to be Super Saiyan Grade 3, Ultra Super Saiyan, as the fans often called it, much like they called Grade 2 Ascended Super Saiyan. So, with regard to this, as we have with Trunks, using this primarily, Goku tapped into it in the Time Chamber. This is, as I talked about in a video you guys can actually see in the top right corner, arguably the worst mainline Super Saiyan form, at least in the original manga, because the fact that, well, it was useless. Much like with Grade 2, but even more so, even more on steroids, even further beyond, Grade 3 was a form that, well, was a failure. It was meant to fail. It was really strong and really bulky and really jacked up, and the inspiration for another form I'll talk about here soon, Legendary. But with that being said, it was so slow, it couldn't hit its opponent, and it was ultimately just worthless, abandoned, aside from the one time that Trunks used it to kind of goad Vegeta into getting close so he can hit him in Dragon Ball Super. So for me, I mean, this form, it looks awesome, but it's terrible. So you could argue maybe it's an F, but considering that there are some forms that maybe come afterward you could say are an F for sure, I'm going to give it a D, because, you know, it still looks awesome at the very least, unlike some of the other ones that deserve the F's tier. Now, then we have grade 4, which is, well, the full power version of Super Saiyan, not to be confused with Super Saiyan Full Power, as we'll get to soon apparently, but in terms of all that, this is grade 4, mastered Super Saiyan, full power Super Saiyan, what Goku and Gohan achieve in the time chamber. It is a better version of the original form of Super Saiyan. Many people believe it has a higher multiplier. I'm not really in that camp. For me, I think that it uses up less energy, allows them to suppress their power even more than regular Super Saiyan would, so they could actually use it practically walking around in the form. And also not just that, but they don't waste all the energy of transforming into it that they would have with the previous forms. So for me, I would say that this is pretty much the exact same tier going up here of S, because even though I do love the design of Super Saiyan, the initial grade, that fluffy hair that he has and Vegeta had when he became Super Vegeta and so on, I think that Super Saiyan grade 4 is really just a better version of it. And even though it gets surpassed in the very same arc, especially the same fight that's really shown off in, well, it is still pretty much just as good, if not better, than the original one. So let's now get into Gohan's surpassing of that form with Super Saiyan grade 3, or grade 2, or Super Saiyan 2, geez, what's up, Mike? Grade 5 is what it was actually originally called. So with regard to Super Saiyan 2, as we have right here, what would we actually give this in terms of the forms? Well, for me, I would have to give this an S tier. Because the thing is that Super Saiyan grade 2, for me, it's an even more awesome, badass looking version of Super Saiyan, and it's even stronger. It does not have any of the drawbacks of stamina or too much bulk or too little speed that grade 2 and grade 3 have. But not just that, just like with Super Saiyan, it actually allowed the character who achieved it first to defeat the villain. For me, that is incredibly important. And let me go full screen for this. When it comes to explaining how great a form truly is, the impact it had when it was introduced, the overall point of why it was introduced. Because you see, Super Saiyan, it defeated Frieza. Super Saiyan 2, it defeated Cell. They were essentially the manifestations of this brand new form that allowed them to overcome and defeat the greatest obstacle at the time. That's what forms, for me, that's how they are executed the absolute best. And I'm going to be doing a whole video explaining why, in my estimation, I don't want to get spoilers for all the rankings in this, but let's just say that forms weren't necessarily handled as well in Dragon Ball Super compared to in Dragon Ball Z in that section of the original manga by Toriyama. Because the truth is that with regard to 1 and 2, they both achieved what forms were meant to, which is not just to give you a power-up but you still fail because the plot says so, but no, to overcome the ultimate enemy. And sure, with Super Saiyan 2, as we could see right here, it is still something that Gohan needed a little bit of help in terms of the motivation of Goku, in terms of things going awry. Toriyama didn't want to just have him dominate Cell and win instantly like that. It wasn't like Mazaku in this case or something from Yu Yu Hakusho, but either way, or Mob Psycho unlocking 100% with Mob, but still, it is something that ultimately, no pun intended perhaps, was able to allow Gohan to basically sum up his entire character arc, achieving his hidden potential, becoming the strongest, actualizing all that, and being the villain. So for me, S tier. Perfect. So Let's get into the next one, Super Saiyan 3. So Super Saiyan 3 is one of those forms that, like these two, kind of failed and had too many drawbacks. You see, Super Saiyan 3 didn't fail to the same degree as these two because the fact that even though Super Saiyan 3 didn't kill the main villain in the arc it was introduced, it still was something that achieved the initial goal of delaying Fat Buu. You see, because Toriyama likely introduced this form of Super Saiyan 3 for that purpose. Goku had to stall Fat Buu so that Trunks would be able to get the Dragon Radar, so that in turn he would be able to help to use the Dragon Balls in the future, bring back those killed by Buu, and so that Trunks, of course, would be able to survive and fuse with Goten and hopefully, in the initial point for Goku at that time, defeat Buu as Gotenks. Of course, that fails. So did Gohan, so did, well, ultimately Super Saiyan 3 Goku, but at least he was able to stall Buu at the time. In terms of the design, it looks awesome, aside from the weird thing with the eyebrows missing, but hey, it was a weird flourish that Toriyama decided to throw in. It's basically Super Saiyan 3 on steroids, which is almost like Super Saiyan 2 on steroids. He has super long metal hair, like golden locks that are really long. He has the lack of eyebrows, which makes him look almost more primal in a sense, which I'll get into some of the other forms. And not just that, but additionally, we also have the fact that it has the lightning like Super Saiyan 2 is usually shown to have, and it is, well, incredibly more powerful than those other forms. But the weakness is that it brings out Goku's power to such a degree that it just is constantly pouring out like a massively leaky faucet you can't turn off, and so eventually it just dumps all his stamina. The first time he uses it, it drains him so much that he's not even able to use or to stay on Earth for longer than he's supposed, for the 24 hours. He trains several hours worth in like a few minutes fighting Fat Buu. And even when he comes back to life, he's fighting Kid Buu, he just runs out of stamina, can't power up to full with that 1 minute that Vegeta's buying him, and ultimately fails to defeat Kid Buu, and they have to use the Spirit Bomb. So only in the movies does this truly kind of succeed. With Fusion Reborn, it allowed him to beat up Fat Janemba. You could argue he didn't really win because Janemba still just immediately transformed into Super Janemba and beat him. And then, of course, with Fusion Reborn, or with Wrath of the Dragon, he was able to sustain the damage long enough to use the Dragon Fist against Hirudegarn, but even then he just kind of had an ass-pull power-up that came out of nowhere so that he could beat the main villain, because the movie was literally titled, "If Goku can't do it, who can?" So for me, I'd give Super Saiyan 3, well, a C. Because even though awesome looking form, even though it is, well, an iconic one, has one of the coolest and most iconic transformation sequences, one of my favorite lines from the English dub, and this is to go even further beyond 5 minutes of screaming. The fact is that, well, as a form itself, not necessarily the best. I could see it going up to B just because of iconography, and maybe I need to put something in B at some point, right? But either way, for me, could be better. So that's going to lead into some of these other forms now. Let's get into Dragon Ball GT before we get into the movies and also in Dragon Ball Super. And so with Dragon Ball GT, we have Golden Ozaru, the precursor of Super Saiyan 4. Now, I love the Ozaru form. For me, the original one could be like an S tier or an A tier at least, because it is awesome. Goku turns into King Kong, Vegeta does too. Golden Ozaru, for Goku, it's okay looking, it's just kind of Ozaru with like a Super Saiyan twist. For Vegeta, baby Vegeta in this case, I love the way that his clothing as baby Vegeta with that final form, which you could argue is like his version of Super Saiyan 3 or whatever, looks with the outfit. So I don't know if I'd give this an S. Maybe I'd give this a or a B tier in terms of those two. It's kind of hard to say. I'm going to go with A for right now, though. Then, of course, we have Super Saiyan 4. I mean, this for me is actually my absolute favorite form in the entire franchise. So for me, this automatically has to go to S tier. This thing looks awesome. It's primal. It takes Goku back to, the roots of the character of Sun Wukong, of a character who is very ape-like, Sun Wukong was an ape. And of course, Goku was originally inspired by him. Literally, Son Goku is a Japanese alliteration of Sun Wukong, the Chinese character from Journey to the West. And so I love how it takes Super Saiyan full circle. It combines the Ozaru with the humanoid Super Saiyan form. It isn't just like yellow hair and yellow aura. It is the black hair with the red fur, which looks really cool, the red eyeshadow, almost looking like a Kabuki warrior or something like that, and it still has the golden aura, which I do think would have been cooler if it was red, but either way, that's a little nitpick in terms of the design. My favorite design of the Super Saiyan forms, it was able to defeat the main villain in which it was introduced, the arc. There are some people who will argue that full power Super Saiyan 4 or Super Saiyan 4 full power is a separate form. For me, it's just a fully powered up version of this, but for Goku, this is the final form he ever needs. It brings out all of his power and potential to the absolute maximum. It takes him from being a kid to being an adult again, which fixes that issue in GT, and also at the same time, well, like I said, beats the villain in the arc it's introduced with Baby. And not just that, but also he just stays in it the whole time. He keeps improving it. It lets him gain access to other things like, his 10 times Kamehameha. And Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta looks awesome too. So for me, love the form. Very good, very impactful. Arguably the best part of Dragon Ball GT. So I got to put it right there as S tier. Now let's get into some of the movies. So we have Broly's non-controlled, well, let's just go with this first one, the Super Saiyan Blue before Super Saiyan Blue, which is Broly's suppressed or controlled Super Saiyan form. Blue hair, looks okay, I guess, nothing impressive, but, for me, it's like, it looks kind of cool, but Broly himself doesn't really get necessarily cool with the forms until we get into one I'll get into momentarily. But I'll put this about, I don't know, it's in terms of the impact in the movie, barely has any. It's suppressed compared to when he unleashes his full power and stuff. So in terms of cool design, stuff like that, I don't know. I guess I could put this as a D. It's not really that impressive to me. It looks kind of cool, but barely any impact. Same thing with this. It's just like a worse version of this. I don't know if I wouldn't put this in F. It's just like his Super Saiyan, but it's going in D. It's getting the D. And so what next? Well, Legendary Super Saiyan. So for that, I'm going to go up here and give this a A. It looks really cool. And also Broly is able to wreck the other characters with it. In terms of this, it's a better version in many ways of Super Saiyan Grade 3. It looks awesome, great design. Broly is able, like I said, to just beat up all the other characters, but in terms of overall impact, iconography, some people might put in S. But for me, I'd put it more in like the A tier. It looks cool, but in terms of my preferences, in terms of like the staying power in the franchise, in terms of like how much it truly achieves in the story, it's just, it gives him a cool looking, unique form and power up, but I wouldn't really give it an S tier necessarily. So I think A is good, and it's the most iconic version for me of Broly's forms. Super Saiyan full power, this is kind of just like a toned down or lesser version of the same thing. It's way more powerful, of course, in the movie because, well, it's allowing him to be able to fight against Blue Gogeta, Blue Gogeta in this case, and he still has to try a good amount against Broly. The dude goes from fighting against the base Saiyans, who are already stronger than Super Saiyan God, apparently, to being, able to fight against Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta, who sure has the advantage the whole time, but at the same time, he's still hitting him with a bunch of moves and doesn't really have him totally defeated until he's charging up that Kamehameha at the end. So I'd give it a step down from the original Super Saiyan, Legendary Super Saiyan form. doesn't even really let him talk or anything when he's in it, which is, again, a step down from when Broly is in that form in the original movie. So I would give it a B in this case. Gotta give something a B, and I think that fits. Now, here we go with the worst forms. Here is False Super Saiyan, F. This thing is, well, basically Toei's version of Super Saiyan before Toriyama actually introduced it. In some ways, it's funny because it's more kind of in line with what Toriyama originally was envisioning Super Saiyan, which is that he didn't necessarily plan to have Super Saiyan, according to interviews, be, well, any real change visually. But then he was like, well, it'll be easier to convey for an audience that Super Saiyan is, well, a different form and a different state for Goku by changing his hair. Toriyama's original design was white hair, red eyes. But then, of course, it changed to being the blonde hair, aqua, marine, blue eyes, whatever have you, the green eyes. Either way, it changed over time. This is Toei's bad version of it. It's not even called False Super Saiyan, it's just Super Saiyan, but it's a failure. Even in the movie Lord Slug, where it debuts, it can't even beat Lord Slug. He has to use Kaioken. Apparently Kaioken's better than Super Saiyan and Lord Slug for some reason, and the Spirit Bomb, like every half of the movies ending with one, right, to defeat Lord Slug. So it's garbage. F tier. Next one, Super Saiyan Power, Saya Power, F tier. This is also, well, the basically it's an animation error. So in the Otherworld Tournament arc, Goku goes with Pikkon to Hell, HFIL in the English dub, Home for Infinite Losers, because they didn't want to say Hell in the English dub. Not just because of censorship of what people consider to be a swear, but more because the fact that, well, they didn't want to include much religious iconography in the story. That's why Kami, which literally means God in Japanese, changed to just, being Kami, untranslated, the guardian of the earth, and Kaio and the other gods being just, Kais and things that, they're obviously still gods and divine beings, but let's just not say that. So either way, the animators had Goku turn into a Super Saiyan to fight against the Ginyu Force and such. And then they're like, wait a second, he doesn't need to become a Super Saiyan to fight the Ginyu Force. That's stupid. It makes no sense. And so, even though, to be fair, Frieza and Cell were there, so he could have been powering up for them, but either way, they decided to color his hair back to black, but his hair still spikes up like a Super Saiyan, and he still has a Super Saiyan aura. So, Super Saiyan animation error might as well be what it's called. So, F tier, garbage. Next one is Super Saiyan Gado, Super Saiyan God. Now, Super Saiyan God, I think, is actually an okay form in terms of the design. I don't really enjoy the design as much as a lot of these others. It kind of symbolizes modern Toriyama's art, in which, the characters get a lot leaner. They don't look as bulky as like the original Super Saiyan or 2 or 4 especially, or Legendary and stuff like that. So in terms of the design, when it has a really good animator behind it, it can look good, like Vegeta in this movie, for instance. Goku and Takahashi drew him in the Tournament to Power. I like the fiery aura. The red hair is okay, but in terms of like impact, like, who does Super Saiyan God beat? He doesn't beat Beerus. It's like a cool looking form at points that's able to kind of fight against opponents, but ultimately, it doesn't really hold up as well as many of the other forms. The thing is that Super Saiyan God is basically immediately replaced by another form I'll get into next, Super Saiyan Blue. And not just that, but it just kind of ends up being like a setup form eventually. It gives Goku a big boost in his base form moving forward. Same thing for Vegeta, I suppose, when he gets it off screen so they can go into the next one and stuff. But in terms of like it actually accomplishing anything, it doesn't really do that. So it's not really like that great of a design for me. It's not really that impactful in the story, other than like giving Goku and Vegeta yet another power up. It looks cool at times, but you can make most of these forms look really cool depending on how they're animated. So I'm between like a C and a D, to be honest, but I think it's better than the forms in D, so I guess I would give it a C. But yeah, it's another form that for me just is not really as good as the much better forms. Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan, aka Super Saiyan Blue right here. With this form, I'm going to give it a D. Because the truth is, I'm going to give it the D. But no, the truth is that this form, you know, it can look cool at times, but it's just a color swap of Super Saiyan, the original one, in terms of giving it blue hair and an aura that's slightly different. You know, it's like a form that never should have existed or didn't really need to come when it did in terms of the story. You know, the thing is that we didn't get enough time with Super Saiyan God. So to immediately give Goku and Vegeta a new form that's like God going into Super Saiyan and then it's blue instead of red, like, that ain't it, man. You know, it looked cool when it transformed, like with the icy shattering aura and stuff. You know, like it's stronger than Super Saiyan God, obviously. Like, you know, even though a lot of people still argue that, you know, there's a lot of stuff in that regard in terms of that. But in terms of narrative, it's worse than the other forms above it. It never, you know, it doesn't truly defeat the enemy like it should. In terms of Goku could have beaten Frieza, but then he doesn't, so he loses. Frieza was stronger than him in the very same form they introduced the arc. It's only that in the form, the only thing is that Frieza lost because of stamina. So it's just like, it just is a form that eventually gets surpassed. Goku has to go Super Kaioken on top of it and stuff, which for me is like the best part of the form, bringing back Kaioken, having the cool contrast of red and blue. But again, blue itself is just an inferior form to most of the forms above it in terms of design, in terms of impact in the story. It's one of the problematic forms in Super that's introduced, but ultimately, well, fails. And so that's why for me it's getting the D. And the same thing with Super Saiyan Rose. I mean, Rose, it's just Super Saiyan Blue, but it's color swapped, and so it has pink hair instead. A lot of people really like Goku Black as a character, but you know, it's like it's just like a pinkish, purplish kind of form, like, you know, an evil god inside of a Saiyan's body becoming a Super Saiyan, or really it's just Super Saiyan Blue, same description as Blue basically, but you know, has even less impact because it's around for one arc with a single character. You know, I wouldn't give it an F because it's better than these, I guess, but still, it's just, you know, it just ain't it. It's just, you know, it looks kind of cool, but that's it. It just looks cool. The only reason Goku Black continues to do well in the fights is because he has some BS Senkai power, or he gets healed in the manga by Zamasu. And for Blue, you know, at least in the manga, Toyotaro gave it more of like a build up to mastered Super Saiyan Blue and stuff. But even then, like, it doesn't really accomplish anything. In Super Saiyan Rose, it gives Goku Black a power up, but again, it's surpassed by a form like Super Saiyan Rage, which for me, it gets an F. Because the thing is that Super Saiyan Rage, well, let's look at it. Super Saiyan Rage is a form that comes out of nowhere. It is not very good in terms of the design. It just looks like, you know, basically Super Saiyan with Broly eyes, blanked out eyes like this, and, you know, like Super Saiyan, legendary Super Saiyan form. It's never explained. It gives Trunks just like an ambiguous power-up where he's able to suddenly be able to fight against a character that Vegito as Blue was fighting against. And, well, I mean, I would say that at least it let him defeat the villain, but it didn't. I mean, he took the sword, Spirit Bomb Contrivance Sword, you know, the Contrivance Sword, we should just call it the Plot Hole Sword or whatever, the plot power, and chopped him from the D up, but instead this form goes D down. And then, well, what happened? Well, Zamasu turned into the timeline and then he failed. Like, this wasn't even the manga. It's just like Trunks gets some BS new power up, some new form that doesn't make any sense. It was never explained. He just gets really angry and he basically gets like an inverted form of Blue or something. And then it goes away. It's irrelevant in the story. It looks bad. It's just really stupid. And, you know, I loved Trunks. He's one of my favorite protagonists, but no, this form's bad and it deserves an F. Same thing with Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Evolution, Blue Evolution. This is basically just Super Saiyan Blue like this, but then combined with Grade 2. It was just Vegeta's way of powering up to the level of Goku's Kaioken times 20 with a brand new form, but it looks like trash. It's just, you know, a worse looking version of Super Saiyan Blue, which is a worse looking version of Super Saiyan. You know, it just is not good. What does Vegeta really accomplish? I guess it lets him beat Topo, but who cares? Goku could just done that with Ultra Instinct or something, right? Like, it just, and he has to use his final explosion on top of this in order to beat Topo after he transforms into God. He doesn't beat Jiren with it. He doesn't really accomplish anything with it. It disappears from the story immediately after this arc. In the anime, in the movie Dragon Ball Super Broly and Super Hero, it's never referenced. In the manga, trying to remember if he even gets it, but it's just a form that really is just lackluster and weak. So I wouldn't give this anything other than an F. And we have Legendary Super Saiyan 2. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll give it a D. I'll give Kefla the D. I mean, like most Dragon Ball fans, right? The thing is that, it's just basically like we had Girl Broly with KO, which is just a knockoff of Broly, and then Toriyama decided to do Broly for real in the next arc, in the movie. And then, she gets a controlled version of it for KO, and then Kefura, she has basically when she transforms. Is this KO? I think this might even be KO. I would just give it a D. I guess there's a character arc involved in her learning to control her power, and then, going from, I don't know, just like ridiculously jacked, like she just drank a gallon of steroids right before her fight, and then she just gets this version, which is slightly better. It's not like the worst form, but I would definitely give it the D, because it just ain't it, like most of the forms in Super, really. I could have talked about Beast, I could have talked about the Ultra Instinct, but some of those kind of ride the lines. They're not really called or referred to as Super Saiyan as far as I could tell. Ultra Instinct, silver haired, might as well be Super Saiyan Silver or whatever, but overall, these are the real forms of Super Saiyan for me, for the most part. I guess you could say that the best ones are 1, its mastered form, 2 and 4. A tier, you got your Golden Ozara, the original one, if I would have put it on here. Legendary, B would be, basically the knockoff version of Legendary. C, you got your Super Saiyan Grade 2, Super Saiyan 3, Super Saiyan God. You get the D with Grade 3, Broly's Super Saiyan forms, Blue, Rosé, Legendary 2, and then F, the trashiest tier of all, Fall Super Saiyan, Saya Power, Ikari, and Blue Evolution. So let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments. How would you rank the Super Saiyan forms? Would you have included other ones along the way? I'm sure that some people might have. Maybe I'll just save those for a separate ranking list in the future. Always wanted to do this one, so make sure to subscribe, enable notifications, like this video if you like it, comment like I said, and stick around, because there's a lot more videos to come in the future of Super Saiyajin.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.